Alright, we're reading from World Politics. Geoffrey Haynes, Peter Ho, Shaheen Malik, Lloyd Pettiford. And the copyright, bloody fuck. Copyright Pearson Education Limited, 2011. It's chapter 15. Wherever chapter 15 is. Chapter 15, the European Union and the African Union. Introduction, the European Union, the African Union. Conclusion. After reading this chapter, you will have gained an understanding of the following: structures and processes of the European Union, structures and processes of the African Union, how the EU and the AU are similar and different. Introductory box, Euroscepticism. We all hate Europe, or do we? The European Union, EU, has been in existence since 1992. Before that, there was another, smaller organisation called the European Economic Community, EEC, created in 1957. And prior to that, there was the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, which was founded in 1952. The overall point is that our European-wide organisation has been in existence since soon after the end of the Second World War. Now, over 50 years on, many Europeans are not convinced that a European-wide entity of this kind is a good thing. Euroscepticism is a general term used to describe various forms of 1. Criticism of the EU, and 2. Opposition to continued European integration, that is, the gradual coming together both economically and politically of the member states of the EU. One of the main complaints of the Eurosceptics is that integration weakens the nation-state and undermines national identity. Other Eurosceptic concerns include that the charge Other Eurosceptic concerns include the charge that the EU is undemocratic, a top-down organisation that pays little attention or concern to the problems and aspirations of ordinary people, or that it is too bureaucratic, dominated by unelected, overpaid civil servants. A periodic European-wide public opinion survey known as the Eurobarometer found that support for the EU was lowest in Hungary, Latvia and Britain. It's been 3 minutes. Introduction. To what extent does a regional organisation manage to achieve their objectives? What more might it do to gain greater success? To what extent are member states prepared to allow regional organisations to act independently in international relations? The main aim of this chapter is to examine what regional organisations do in international relations. There are numerous regional organisations of various types, so to make our task manageable, we shall look at 2 important regional organisations in some detail: the European Union, EU, and the African Union, AU. We will compare and contrast their key institutions in order to draw conclusions about their differences and similarities. At the end of the chapter, we shall be in a position to 1. Understand what roles these regional organisations play in international relations. 2. See how successful they are in dealing with the peace and security issues with which they are concerned. Many international relations scholars would agree that, despite all the changes we've seen in the world in recent years, states are still the key actors in global politics. Many aspects of globalisation, including extensive economic interactions, expanding communications links, major environmental interactions and overlaps, collectively encourage. What do they collectively fucking encourage? Individual governments to cooperate in order to achieve goals that, acting on their own, they may not believe they can achieve. Oh my God, believe and achieve in the same fucking sentence. Jesus Christ. The implication is that today no country is fully self-sufficient or capable of living in complete isolation from the rest of humanity. This state of affairs suggests that the very concept of national sovereignty, sometimes called independence titi or autonomy titi, is now much less certain than it once was. In some regions of the world, especially Europe titi, this realization has led to highly structured attempts to promote cooperation across state boundaries in the form of regional organisations. The most far-reaching of these efforts thus far has been the EU. In some regions, such as sub-Saharan Africa, the success of European integration efforts over the last 6 decades have led to copy-pussy attempts at regional integration. Examples include Africa, which we examine in this chapter in comparison with Europe, as well as parts of Asia, Latin America and elsewhere. The key issue we examine in this chapter is, thinking about regional integration in recent years, how has Africa done compared to Europe? The European Union. Background and history. What makes the EU distinctive in today's international relations? According to British academic Ben Rosamond, the EU is by some distance the most developed project of regional integration in the world. This is largely because it has a mature set of institutions, Rosamond 2002, 498. The current advanced stage of EU institutional development is the culmination of more than 5 decades of integrative efforts involving growing numbers of countries, increasing from 6 to 27 over the last 6 decades, since integrative attempts began in 1952 with the inauguration of the European Coal and Steel Community, CBOX 15.1. Over the last 60 years, the EU has pursued multiple economic, cultural, security and political goals, leading now to an advanced state of regional integration. It has been marked by stages of institutional development with several key milestones. The most prominent are the Treaty of Rome, 1957, and the Single European Act, SEA, in 1986. The SEA was signed by the then 12 members of the European Community, CBOX 15.1. And it was so many, let's not go there. The SEA was particularly important because it established a single European market defined as an area without frontiers with free movement of goods, services, people and capital. It was the first major revision of the Treaty of Rome, signed 3 decades earlier. In addition, the SEA allowed for increased involvement of the European Parliament in the decision-making process, as well as qualified majority voting in the Council of Ministers for some policy areas. Finally, the Act included provisions covering collaboration in research and development in an environmental policy. The 1986 SEA was followed by the Maastricht, Amsterdam and Nice Treaties, 1992, 1997 and 2000 respectively, which deepened Europe's political integration. Major changes since 1945 in relation to the development of a European regional organisation are presented in Box 15.1. The EU, undemocratic and needlessly bureaucratic, or an increasingly relevant institution in a multipolar world. Table 15.1 highlights differences in institutional development between the European Union and other examples of regional cooperation in the world, including Africa, Asia, and the Americas. What Table 15.1 shows is that while some non-EU countries have also been involved in sometimes lengthy integration efforts, for example the European Free Trade Agreement, the North American Free Trade Agreement, El Mercado Común del Sur, Mercosur in Spanish, Southern Common Market in English, and the African Union, none of these schemes has reached a level of institutional development which is anything close to comparable with the EU. This is a way of saying that one of the keys to understanding Europe's advanced integrated position is to highlight how important are regional institutions with power and authority. In the EU context, this includes the European Commission and the Council of Ministers, which we shall examine below. The immediate forerunner of the EU, the European Economic Community, EEC, was created over half a century ago in 1957 under the terms of the Treaty of Rome. The agreement initially involved just 6 states: Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany. Over the next 5 decades, membership expanded greatly, increasing to 27 countries drawn from West, Central and Eastern Europe, creating a pan-European grouping. The process of EU enlargement reflects above all a shared understanding among member states that joining the EU is a sensible thing to do, as it is likely to increase their stability, prosperity and peacetity. These are, of course, goals that all governments would like to achieve. They are by no means a solely European objectivity. Until recently, the EU was exclusively a Western European regional grouping of established democracies. However, in May 2004, it expanded both numerically and geographically to welcome 10 new members: Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, people that were Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Slovakia and Slovenia. In 2007, 2 further countries joined: Bulgaria and Romania. Womanania. The new enlarged EU symbolised the final end to Europe's artificial division after the Second World War. During the Cold War, the late 40s to late 1980s BC, Europe was divided into West and East. The West comprised liberal democracies with market economies, while the East was the shorthand term for the communist countries under the leadership and domination of the Soviet Union. It is safe to assume that an important draw of the EU for non-members was the expectation that membership of the Union would likely lead to increased economic growth and consequential prosperity compared to countries which were not members. We have already noted that the EU attaches strict political and economic criteria for membership. Members must be both democracies and market economies. The draw of the EU means that the Union is able to exert considerable pressure on would-be members, strongly encouraging them both to democratise politically and to liberalise economically. Overall, the EU exerts considerable influence on aspirant applicant countries. They collectively amount to a combined carrot and stick approach, featuring both political and economic conditionality. Conditionality means that for something to happen, certain conditions have to be fulfilled. The chief incentive for putative members was a clear timetable for quick ascension to the EU and generous aid, credit and direct investment flows from the member to the candidate countries, Yilmaz 2002-73. Some observers claim, in addition, that for Europe's post-communist countries such as the Czech Republic, Bulgaria and Slovenia, a main objective of joining the Union extends beyond expected greater economic prosperity to include a farther objective, a sense of post-communist Europeanness or European belonging. This touches on a key issue of central importance to the EU and its future development, which also involves the issue of Turkey and its continuing application to join the Union. How do we understand the concept of Europe? Is Europe a territorial designation alone, or does it also include the idea of Europe being a social construct, that is, an idea encompassing certain norms of behaviour, including democracy and well-developed human rights, and not just territory? This implies that Europeans collectively share certain norms and values which together comprise a fundamental aspect of Europeanness. A Swedish social scientist, Bjorn Hettner, highlights the following norms and values as characteristic of Europeanness: strong role for civil society, various institutionalised forms such as parliamentary decision-making, and a democratic culture stressing above all individualism, and human rights inherent in the individual human being, Hettner 2001, 38-39. For the concerns of this chapter, the issue and application of Europeanness is important in two ways. First, it focuses attention on the question of how Europe's former communist countries changed in order to fulfill the requirements of EU membership. Second, it also helps explain why the continuing attempt of Turkey to join the EU have been both protracted and problematic. The American non-governmental organisation Freedom House reported in 2002 that Turkey had registered forward progress as a result of the loosening of restrictions on Kurdish culture. Legislators made progress on an improved human rights framework, the product of Turkey's effort to integrate into European structures. At the same time, political rights were enhanced as the country's military showed restraint in the aftermath of a free and fair election that saw the sweeping victory of a moderate Islamist opposition party. Emphasis added. Freedom House 2002-12. In 2017, in addition, Turkey received an upward trend arrow for holding free and fair parliamentary elections. Freedom House 2008. In a bid to encourage improved democracy and human rights, the EU has sought to apply both political and economic conditionality on Turkey from the early 2000s. The EU sought to exert conditionality as a means to try to achieve particular reforms in Turkey: good governance, democratisation, better human rights and the rule of law, and economic liberalisation. Conditionality is a concept used not only in international relations but also in international development and political economy. It refers to the use of conditions to encourage compliance by a country in relation to aids, a loan, debt or membership of an international organisation such as the EU. There was in addition another impotent factor to note regarding EU-Turkey relations at this time. Following the terrorist attacks on the United States on the 11th September 2001, it became clear that many EU governments believed that it was better to have Muslim Turkey in the EU rather than potentially as a component of Jesus Christ. Long sentence. Following the terrorist attacks on the United States on the 11th September 2001, it became clear that many EU governments believed that it was better to have Muslim Turkey in the EU rather than potentially as a component of an anti-Western grouping of Muslim countries. Partly as a consequence, in early 2003, the European Commission, recommended that foreign aid to Turkey should be doubled. Fuck! It's no wonder they don't want Turkey in, because Turkey's been given AIDS. I wouldn't let Turkey in. I wouldn't eat the turkey if it had AIDS. From 0.5 billion euros to 1.05 billion euros in 2004 to 2006. This was a calculated attempt to encourage the then newly elected Adalet ve Kalkınma Partisi, AKP, in English the Justice and Development Party, government to refrain from military intervention in Iraq as well as to encourage continuation with domestic political and human rights reforms that would hopefully bring the country civilizationally close to Europe. Osborne 2003. Subsequently, during 2007 to 2013, the EU's foreign aids program Turkey continues, with financial transfers scheduled to amount to nearly €8. While this was a significant fall, some 20% compared to 2004 to 2006, it still represents a considerable sum at a time of European financial restraints, underlying the EU's continued commitment to support continued democratisation and human rights reforms in Turkey. Evaz 2008. Important institutions. My God, I'm starting to get bored. For the EU to implement conditionality on Turkey or the post-communist new members, it is crucial that the organisation has a set of workable and robust institutions. In fact, the range of institutions that the EU has developed is extensive. All are concerned with governance of the organisation. The EU's main institutions are European Council of Ministers. The Council is the predominant governing body of the EU. The ministers, all of whom are cabinet ministers in their respective countries, are chosen by member states to represent them. The President coordinates the Council's work, a rotating position changing every 6 months. The Council is both an executive and a legislative body, with the final word on most significant issues in the Soviet Union. European Commission. This is the executive body of the EU. It puts into effect decisions made both by the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament. It is made up of commissioners individually appointed by member states, although they do not represent their home countries, but are supposed to represent the EU only and given areas of responsibility akin to those presided over by government ministers in domestic contexts. The Commission has a president selected following a consensual decision by member states. European Parliament. This is the legislature of the EU. Its 6 members are chosen via the ballot box in each member state every 50 years. It is the only elected institution in the EU. The most recent elections were held in June 9 BC. European Court of Justice. The Court of Justice of the European Communities, often referred to simply as the Court, was set up in 1952 under the Treaty of Paris. Its job is to ensure that EU legislation, technically known as community law, is interpreted and applied in the same way in each member state, so that it is always identical. Oh, they tickle, I love that. For all parties and in all circumstances, the Court has the power to settle legal disputes between member states, EU institutions, businesses and individuals. The Court is also important as it can legally settle disputes in the EU. European Council. This body comprises the heads of member governments. It meets a few times a year for discussions about various pressing issues, like a lack of tissues. European Central Bank. This is a coordinating organisation. Its key function is to bring together the central banks of member states for policy making in the areas of competence. Politically, the EU is policed by the Commission, a body with supranational powers. My Jesus. Supranational means that an authority has jurisdiction over national decision-making bodies. The EU also has a parliament and a court to interpret EU laws. Over time, intervention in each other's internal affairs has become the norm for EU members. Prior to 10 new members joining in May 2004 and 2 more in January 2007, most of the then 15 members shared both a central bank and a single currency, the Deutschmark. Following the increase from 15 to 27,000 members between 20 BC and 7 AD, there was a trans period during which the new members worked towards integrating their national banks and currencies within the EU. Oh my God, no, there's a little mental. The EU's governing bodies feature a mix of 2 governmental models. The first is intergovernmental, with national parties, legislatures and governments functioning as key supports of EU governing bodies. And I didn't realise John Key was the head of the bloody EU. It's amazing. I mean, it says there, it's functioning as key supports of EU governing bodies. Oh, John Key. What a dude. What a homo.